huge problem in that they base a lot of their balancing on whether you're on mouse and keyboard or controller, not necessarily console. And so,
Mhm.
like, why would I want to handicap myself, against mouse and keyboard players? But
Yeah, I mean,
that's for
if crossplay is finally coming, that means, I mean, I'm not playing Destiny at the moment, but maybe if I play again, we can actually play together because we're both on PC.
right. Yep, yep. But that's a different podcast. This one we're talking about Dresden. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
segue.
let's try to stay on topic this time.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
I make no promises.
Never. We're going with this weird intangible topic anyway of more mirror speculation, because last time it was kind of fun, and also we're gonna shit on some dumb people.
Well, that was professionally put.
Yeah.
Good job. I mean, we only made it about halfway through the book series anyway, and some of the points we had were, were just
Not
like
even really.
one for a book and whatever. But then we found this TV tropes thing, which kind of is fueled this other topic that we're trying to bring ourselves around to, which is like bad fan theories. And it's like, look, guys, we get it, right? Like everybody wants, that Harry Thomas love scene, right? Everybody wants,
What?
whatever. Well, I was just tying it back to the slash fiction thing we were talking about earlier, but like you come out with this premise like that, and then you go find justification for it. That's not how the books get written. like maybe on occasion, but I can't imagine that, like Butcher starts with, what if Murphy had a kid? And then the only justification he can come up with is, well, obviously time travel, was involved.
If there's one thing where Butcher definitely started from, I want this result, it was Envils.
Yeah, right. That's a
Okay,
good one.
How do we get this joke? Conjuritis, that's the thing. Right. It is now.
Or famously the BDSM scene in Death Masks, right? Where it's like making that plot relevant and having that come around. Like there are these little things, right? But he didn't just conjure something along those lines, or like, oh, we've got to come up with a way to neutralize the White Court, so asexuality is the solution. Like I gotta say, man, I think even the White Court is going to get around something like that. I have belief in supernatural sex vampires,
right?
To overcome something like that.
As a point to explore of how White Court affects asexuality, maybe that would be something to discuss. But Dresden is not asexual. Right. He is overly sexual most of the time. I don't think that's going to work for him.
Well, not to mention the fact that, like, mechanically, Dresden hasn't come up with an original idea in his life as far as potions and magical theory. So he's going to have to go to Bob, and Bob
is not going to do that.
He's like, feed me to Mab. Put me on the fucking Thanksgiving dinner table before I help you with a potion like that. Like, I will literally dissolve. It's just like, no.
Oh, boy. Yeah. All right. So, what do we think Bob will be like in Mirror Mirror and ignoring this weird TV tropes bullshit?
I mean, I think there's a good chance that he has been unlocked, right? If you go back
unlocked
to
but whole, maybe not with a half child running around.
Well, yeah, I think he'll be evil Bob, right? And just that'll be what he is, potentially. It kind of depends on how the Dark Hallow gets used, right? So, and if it. Presumably it still happens because these guys have been preparing for some time before Deadbeat, right? So like that's one of those things where it's like I think a lot of these things would be continuing on regardless of what Dresden did, unless he managed to somehow burn down Chicago in the intervening years, right?
Well, technically it's possible. So the trigger of why the Dark Hallow was about to happen right then was because they had found the book in storage or something. Like they had that what Boney Tony had done, and he was moving everything, and so like they found it in an old locker somewhere, with a bunch of like Nazi memorabilia or something. And now this is why everything's happening right now. So if for some reason that storage facility wasn't opened and sold, then maybe it never happens.
Or if Dresden accidentally knocks off Boney Tony, in the meantime, so.
Yeah. Unless there was someone that was going around making sure that this contraband was being found and then sold and then stirring shit up, which is very possible with the cowl-like people that are running around in the background, but we haven't seen that. Did we just lose people?
I had to plug in my headset, so.
Alrighty.
Easy's not been here since we started. I don't know where he ran off to.
Right. I'm a professional, so I didn't charge it last night, apparently. So,
yeah. So there could be things that are happening in the background to make sure that it continues in these forms, like to try to make Dark Hollow whatnot. But we can assume that at least it'll be attempted, just because it'll be fun, and to see if maybe Harry went through the Dark Hollow instead of making it not happen.
Right. Well, and I mean, even so, Dark Hollow is like order of events, right? If you look at causality, like he's going to get access to a coin, 2 books before he gets access to the Dark Hollow potentially. So, so does he just take up the coin because he's like, delicious power, or does he resist it for some other reason? Because even alternate Harry knows that it's going to subvert his will in new and interesting ways, because I'm assuming his will has been subverted anyway, at least a little bit. Yeah. And then does he just get both power-ups, and then, like, how the hell is R. Dresden going to deal with that? I mean, I guess even with, an Angel and the Dark Hallow, is he really going to be able to tank a Titan, right? So it still might be a little bit of a step down for a villain. But I think there's good math to suggest that he is going to have multiple major power-ups like this, because if every book is escalating, if we're always making Dresden stretch himself, then the next thing he needs to fight is even more dangerous, and it's the most dangerous game. I got to work that in there because he's hunting himself. So
the mostest dangerous.
Yes, right.
I just feel, I can't help but feel like that the Dark Hallow is too much of a power up, even for this Ultra Harry. It's like, I don't know if it will be as powerful, but the way it's described, you're like, you're like, how strong are you? Stronger than Map?
Well, you were a little G, right? So you would be some kind of demigod, and you would have been able to tank the White Council, like the whole thing.
Yeah, that's so insanely powerful.
Yeah, might have been. I would suggest at least an inconvenience for Mab, but yeah.
Even Mab was uncomfortable knowing that Kemlerites were running around.
Right. Like it's probably one of those situations where, like, you might not have been able to kill her, but you certainly would have put the hurt on that maybe somebody else would have gotten the idea to finish her off, right? Like, you don't have to win so much as be a huge inconvenience, for an immortal type, right? So if they set her back like 100 years or something along those lines, they still lost objectively, but she didn't win either, right? It's kind of like having her fight archangels or whatever. It's like, first of all, why would they, to get into that argument? But if we're talking power level, like, it's not going to be a draw. It's not going to be a clear winner, because you're still going to be able to do enough damage in the intervening time. So
it'd be interesting to wonder, like, would Harry really even be involved in the same way with the Dark Hollow, because he was pushed into it by Mavra? I mean, maybe if Mavra if he's connected to Bianca Redcourt, then Mavra was already a friend of Bianca's. Maybe it happens very similar, but he just doesn't have quite as much of a throwdown with her at the end.
Yeah. I was going to say she wouldn't coerce him theoretically. I mean, maybe because evil, but at the same time, like, instead of it being like coerced into doing an errand for the bad guy, it's literally a fetch quest for him, where it's like, we're on the same team, on the same side. Please go retrieve the book and bring it to me. And he's like, done. I had to kill a couple of necromancers on the way. That's not a problem, is it? So.
Yeah. So the one thing that they made a point of like with the whole necromancy and everything, because Mavra and the Black Court are dead, that's bad for them because then they become puppets. But how would that interact with the Red Court?
I don't think it would.
Yeah.
So Bianca and people wouldn't have as much to fear as Mavra does. So they
wouldn't have
maybe
anything.
they wouldn't
to
even
fear.
care.
I mean, they're creatures. They're flesh and blood still.
Do they still respond to faith, or was that only Black Court? Like,
no, they
Red Court the response to Symbol of Faith. Remember in book
like the pentacle.
Yeah, the pentacle with Bianca, like the first time they meet.
Yeah,
right,
it's not as strong, but it'll still. I mean, because his pentacle and faith stuff works loosely on a lot of dark creatures. The Black Court's the one that it really hits.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, he had the sunlight hanky, which was worse on Bianca than, and I mean, it would be on the Black Court too.
Right. Yeah, but the Red Court was more like demonic than undead or anything like that, right? So.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were more like beast monsters, and I mean, honestly, I would describe the Black Court as more demonic than of the two, just because they're the undead ones. But that's a terminology quibble.
Yeah, it depends on probably the background perspective too, because I'm thinking D&D terms, I admit. So like undead is a different creature than
Well, even here,
case,
there's a difference between demon and like hellspawn, even in this universe.
Right.
I mean, they're still.
Well, and we also have the problem with Dresden's understanding evolves over time, right? Because even the outsiders were demons at one point. So for him, he uses more like our usual world definition, which is like think of Asian cultures, right? Demons and undead are probably the same in a lot of places. Like I'm gonna invoke this just to annoy EG, but talking about the Jade Court and the hopping vampires and shit like that, like they're demons, but they're probably undead, at the same time. So,
well, I think the only distinction he had was he thought he who walks behind was a demon, not an outsider, and then he got that bit of information from Lash.
I think even up through like Deadbeat though, like when he's describing the outsiders attacking the White Council and the Wardens, like he still described them as demons, like in the same breath, but.
Well, I mean, because they make even in that book they make the distinction. They called up demons and outsiders, and that's when we get the first real description of that outsiders are different. They're from the foot soldiers, the old ones, that type of nonsense.
Right. Yeah, and I forget which book it is, but there's it might even be Deadbeat because I can't remember the source. But like he talks about, outsiders come from the Never Never somewhere, but it's so far from where we are in the Never Never, right? But again, I feel like that's just how Harry understands it rather than
right.
Up until he's face to face with the gates.
Yeah, at this point, he still thinks the gates are just a metaphor, basically.
Yeah.
Wait, they're real?
So.
I mean, an outsider's a demon in all intents and purposes, even in the next book when he's talking with Michael, fangs, tentacles seem pretty standard fare. But his sword was really the only thing that could do anything to them as opposed to the council's magic.
Yeah, it takes a lot more bang for your buck, right, to get anything to stick to them. But
right, so I mean, they're a demon in every sense of they're this incomprehensible monster that's just, they're that times a billion. When they're from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to like if your definition of demon is evil spirit, then that kind of covers a huge umbrella term, which is where I think like a lot of Eastern culture, at least my understanding, is like where that breaks down, right? It's like everything's a spirit, but there's good spirits and there's demons. Like one of them is semi-benevolent and maybe a little bit mischievous, and the other one wants to eat your face, so don't sit still too long. So. Well,
when he has that conversation with Ulshavaris, we get some more on that spirit angle about him, her accusing him of being a buck whore or something. Hogan, but the spirit callers.
Right.
So in Death Masks, normal Harry picks up the coin to stop the baby from having touched it because that would have been horrible. But he had been offered it by Nicodemus in the middle when he was like being held hostage underwater and mildly tortured and everything by Breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the alternative Harry would have just taken it then, taken like the offer of power, or do you think he would still have done the thing of trying to save a kid and then taken Lash?
I mean, really, though, it goes back further than that, right? What would he have even been in that situation in the first place? And now I kind of want to think about like what did the prophecy say specifically? Because would the prophecy itself have been different if Harry had made some of these choices and he was swinging for the other team, so to speak? You know.
Also, a good point.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the way it breaks down, because everything from this split is the end of Grave Peril. So essentially, I think a fair amount of book 4 is going to remain unchanged, except that his feelings towards the council and everything is probably going to be worse, because at least as far as I see it, he's going to lose Susan in one way or another in a more permanent, impactful way than he did in the Prime universe.
Right.
And then it's a matter of whether if he actually had it up with the Red Court, then yeah, it's going to be a vastly different experience. But if it's just a matter of he decides to sacrifice her and she goes Red Court and he's still left in the aftermath, because the war is going to start either way anyway. So in this instance, he's going to get the double hit of the war starting despite him still giving her up and having given her up. So that's going to drive a further wedge. And the very next power offer he gets is from Mab. So he could just as easily get in deep with the fairies, theoretically, right then and there. I don't think we're going to see Winter Knight versus Winter Knight. That doesn't make much sense.
Right.
But so it, by the time book 5 rolls around, he could be in a very bad state. But I think the prophecy in and of itself was still impacting him, because that was the whole reason the Knights were trying to get him out, was because he was specifically mentioned as his life was on the line.
Right.
Which I don't think remains really unchanged. I mean, they're still gonna, no matter what, unless he was a Red Court vampire at that point, in which case, I doubt he's really hanging out with Michael.
He might still have been contacted by Cassius in disguise to find the shroud, just like a normal thing, because that wasn't anything that could have been changed.
Well, that's the thing. It depends entirely. I mean, because he was contacted by Cassius under the disguise, under the predication that Harry's still, an investigator at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's a Red Court noble for all intents and purposes, I don't think he's really doing that anymore.
Well, and how early did Nicodemus understand that Harry was Margaret's kid? Because that's what he was taunting him with. Because he know that
he knew him then? So it's probably been for years.
So it could have been go find this person and get this person to investigate and get him involved to be able to offer him a coin and get him entangled in it.
Wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah. It was fitting that you mentioned Ulsharavas earlier, because that was this book, right? And because whatever Cabbage Patch Doll told him what the prophecy was, right? So looked it up. The Wikipedia is good sometimes. Mm-hmm. Should you seek the shroud, Harry Dresden, you will most assuredly perish. That's what he got from the Denarians. They left it, and also what the messenger told the Knights. The part they left out was, if you do not, they all die.
Right.
Which I feel like is kind of important, because I feel like maybe that's a good thing to understand going into Mirror Mirror, is that maybe that's why the swords are out there now, because one time we had all 3 knights in one place and they died. That was catastrophic, So.
Yeah, no, because that's the part that Nicodemus waylays from them getting, which is why Harry's the only one who gets it, and why they're only focused on getting rid of him. Although, even if they had heard that part, they still would have, they're knights, they still would have had it up and done what they were going to do.
Right.
But yeah, it makes sense. I mean, even because the plague itself was a mini plague by comparison. So even if it kills a few 100,000 people in Chicago, it's a big event. But the more important thing is that it would probably get rid of all 3 of them, more or less.
Yeah, sorry. They broke it up onto a second line as well. So there's another sentence, which is, and this city with them. So that's also kind of important.
Right, because
So-
that's what they were doing. Is they were I
Right.
think they were doing it in the airport, right? They were kicking off the plague,
Mhm.
and it was and that would obviously have spread it out to other places because airport.
Right.
But
They were doing 12 Monkeys.
right,
basically.
Chicago was the epicenter though, so it would have had a comparable, maybe not immediately, but a comparable event to the Titan, still in the center of their city.
Sure. I imagine the plague is going to take a little bit more time to level Chicago than
Right.
the Titan
But it's
just
also
walking
gonna-
down the street.
The
blasting.
reach is going to be greater.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you do that, you theoretically kill all the knights. Even if one of them gets away lucky, that guy's not going to be in such a good spot. And so
Well, and you think about it. I mean, Michael and Shiro have been doing this for a long time, but Sonya is very much the rookie still. You
Yeah.
know, so Sonya's probably not making it. If there is some kind of big fight, Shiro was ready to go anyway. And so if you leave Michael by himself, like maybe this is his heroic last stand or something. You know?
right.
But-
Well, I mean, Shiro, he had cancer too, so even if he survived, he wasn't going to be around long anyway.
Michael was already thinking that he should have retired in grave peril.
Right.
And then when he got Amarakis back, he's like, okay, this is a sign I need to continue. I hear
Right.
you. But
Yeah, great line. So
Can't help but wonder. Or I mean, I think I get the in-universe explanation that like kind of Shiro took Harry's place, and then Shiro died for Harry. But I mean, if the prophecy is a prophecy, then either Harry dies or they all die, and Harry didn't die, and they all didn't die.
Well-
I don't care that Shiro kind of took his place in a way, and like the prophecy supposedly should have prophesied these events already.
guess
Free
it's a
will's
question
a
of
son a
prophecy
bitch.
versus free will. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Like if this is Nicodemus' gambit, it's like we're either going to kill this person or everyone else in Chicago, and then Shiro is like, "What about me?" It's like, "Yeah, change the plans. Here we go."
Right. Yeah.
That's-
I mean, prophecy is always touchy like that, right? It's always hard to
Yeah.
write something, great like in that regard because it's like, you either know it and there's predetermination or you don't, and then there's not prophecy, right? Like how does that supposed to work? But
So
Well, the
prophecy
easiest way is
here-
self-fulfilling.
yeah, right.
Prophecies here is really more, best guess, I guess. Like, but not really actual prophecy.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's the same of the archive was essentially an oracle way back in the day because based on its knowledge, it could more or less predict how things are likely to turn out. And I that's probably the same with I mean, unless you are actually someone like Rashid who's poking his head through time and looking at things. And even then, based on what you then do with that information, the river shifts. That was the whole point of what he does with his foresight.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
just
The
There
river
is
shifts,
this-
but it's like dropping a boulder in the river. The river is going to flow around it. I mean, one of our commenters talking about Vaterung talking about the law of conservation of history, right? So, like, it's dangerous maybe because the river shifts, but the more likely outcome for that sort of thing is like, like the river overflows its banks in that section before resuming its normal course. Like, bad things happen, destruction happens, but it's generally going to continue on as it has been, or something.
Yeah, well, theoretically, you only need the shift for that one moment anyway. So as soon as the boulder drops in, that's all that matters because that's the point you're trying to change. And then after that, everything continues the way it should have, quote unquote.
It's ineffable, guys. It's the ineffable plane. So, yeah, got to get good omens in there somewhere. So.
That's your problem, not mine.
I know I'm the reference guy, so I got to make a reference every 35 seconds, or I'm not doing my job. So
I just assumed you'd be like a collapsing neutron star unto yourself and explode.
well, maybe that would be fun.
We could try.
Yeah,
Go sit-
right.
go
For science. So
You're far enough away from me that I don't think it'll impact me.
you might be mistaken about that. Like,
Does
you
it-
might
and
not
neutron-
think it'll impact you, but
I said probably. I'm not a scientist.
that
Well,
sounds
we
like a
will be
world-ending
shortly.
event.
Who's taking notes? Andres, you're the furthest away. You take notes. That way you'll be able to
And
measure
what was-
the impact.
Well, we're recording this for posterity, so somebody will know.
Not to 50. This is clearly beyond 50. So just so we're clear. Death Mask.
I still don't get. Just to bring it back on, I had that's. I guess I just don't like prophecies and stories in general because either it's like, especially in Dresden, where it's very clear there is free will, so this shit changes all the time. So there's not. Yeah, that's kind of the founding principle of like mortals, right? Is that they have free will.
At the same time, if you're talking, say, time travel, is it really when you know that you have to go do these things to make the loop act and the events of causality actually happen? Knowing that we're going to have a time travel book, at least.
No, I don't think that's how it's going to get handled. Just to quibble on that a little bit. He's not going back in time with a checklist of I need to do the following things. He's gonna bumble into those things. Like Butcher has a checklist, don't get me wrong, but I think Dresden's going to be so. Like for example, right? So we got proven guilty. Who's driving the van, right, or whatever, or who's driving the car? I think the likely situation there, if it turns out to be time traveling, Dresden was the driver, and there's a whole fuck ton of if and a whole lot of grain of salt here, right? If he bumps into himself, that's, I mean, you could argue fate, but happenstance that he's running from whatever he's running from in the current book, and he just happens to bump into himself. Like that's the kind of causality I think we're going to be dealing with, right? Dresden is not even when he's got a plan, when does he got a plan, right? So you're telling me that he goes back in time like the fucking Avengers and be like, be back in 35 seconds or the universe implodes, or Dresden finds himself back in time and be like, oh man, I'm the butterfly. I really need to try not to get stepped on or change.
Well, he needs to do the things that he's already done to get him into the place where he is going to be. Like he needs to hit himself with the car so that everything else can happen, and then he can go fix Little Chicago.
Well, yeah, it's very Back to the Future version of time travel.
That's what I'm saying, right? And I think where he's going to actively change something is, again, if big capital 50-foot tall if he's the guy who fixed Little Chicago, that's one that he'll be like, oh shit, he'll be like, oh look, it's my old lab. Oh look, it's Little Chicago. Oh shit, there's the mistake that I made. And fix it there. Or even
how didn't I see it back then? Oh, such a noob.
Yeah, or he takes Bob with him because somebody's got to keep him straight,
Well, Bob will be there. So. Bob's going to be in the basement.
But maybe not the whole time because he did have Bob with him at the hotel as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So he could have...
Well, yeah, it's either one of two things. Either Harry's the one who goes back and does this, and Bob, he has the conversation with Bob from the future and just like tells him not to tell himself. Or it's while he's out, and that still leaves it open for either he's going to do it or it was actually somebody else like Rashid or whatever.
Vatarang or
Mab.
His mom or, I'm just kidding. But,
Or, yeah. So, I mean, I always thought Rashid made the most sense just because he's the one that kicks off events in this book. But other than that, it's not Leah because she's a popsicle. It's not Mab, probably.
It could have been Mab on Leah's
yes, on her behest, but it's tougher when her presence is very clearly occupied elsewhere. Now, I could sort of see the angle because she wants him involved too in order to go to Arctis Tour and all this crap. So there's still an avenue for it to have been her. It's just, I don't know. It's a lot of Mab for a lot of things, which is not improbable. It's just... it gets a little boring after a while.
Maybe Mab goes time traveling with him.
Yeah, no, that would be super.
I'd enjoy that.
I think past Mab would be more annoyed at seeing future Mab than anything Harry does. And vice versa.
I want to see two Mabs snark at each other.
Jeez.
It would just be like arguing with a mirror. There'd be no point.
I don't think they would argue. I think that there would be the buddy cop movie we all need, where it's like, they're both professionals, they're both logical. They'd be like, "Hello, fellow Mab,"
It's bad cop and bad cop. Let's go.
Yeah, Right? Oh, I see Dresden's fucking up your universe too. That's a shock,
I feel like the consequences of two MABs on the physical environment of the Earth is not going to make it feasible.
Right.
Because one, that throws out the immediate imbalance of winter and summer.
Then they can talk to each other through the portal, which is not the Cloud Gate now, damn it. But it should have been. So
no, it shouldn't have been just because people wanted it to be, and I'm glad it wasn't.
Whatever people want will not happen.
So.
It would at least made plot relevant.
And it was because Anish Kapoor made it, and everybody hates that guy.
I didn't know that, but okay.
Apparently. I don't know.
Apparently, I now also hate this person.
I've only read so much into it, but he's the guy who designed it and does other stupid things, and nobody likes him.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to put a Firefly quote in here, but, so... In my
you make a reference?
Referencing that you would have made a reference counts as a reference. I hate to break it to you.
Just saying. So it's Janestown. Maybe you guys, not you guys, because you guys don't get anything. But
no, it's because some of us haven't bothered to watch Firefly because there's no point because it ended.
But it's still greatness.
I'll get to it one day. It's only like 13 episodes. I'll probably find it.
What do you think? This is some kind of science fiction? Honey, we live on a spaceship.
Gee, I wonder what that's referencing.
Yeah.
So Death Masks.
Put the quote up.
What about it?
Quote up. Put the shopping list quote up. It's hilarious. So.
Is it?
Yes. Anyway. Yeah, Death Masks. I mean, is there anything left to cover? So, thank you. So You're welcome, Andrew.
I also liked this one. Just because
I've been watching a lot of Doctor Who. We finally caught up on Capaldi, and we're into Jodie Whittaker's run now. But yeah, so lots of Doctor Who lately. But
I've tried getting into that with the new era, with the first one where the leather clad one, and I'm bored. I think so.
Yeah, get to the end of that. In my opinion, at the end was good, and then because Tenet's next, right? So you gotta, and I can give you a short list if you want to invest like a movie length of time instead of like 20 episodes length of time. So
a friend of mine we watched Day of the Doctor together because she was like, you have to get into this or something. And I was like, this will get you into it. And I was like,
no, you didn't have the context to get it. I can give you bubble episodes that are fantastic standalone things, but like Day of the Doctor, you're missing a lot of context. It's fantastic, but I wouldn't start people there. Like unless you just wanted to sell the actiony bits, which are really not what Doctor Who is. So, but anyway.
Yeah, sure. I can check if you recommend a couple of episodes that are. Just send it to me on Discord later.
Right. Death Masks. Anything else to cover? Because after that was Blood Rights, and Harry's totally starring in a porno because it's the alternate universe Harry, right? So, just kidding. But
well, that again is gonna. It really depends on how big the changes are. Because assuming things follow along, but if they don't, then he's not even going to be around for the Black Court stuff to be blackmailed for it later.
Right.
Yeah. So Mavra's there killing people. Who cares? Maybe he cares a little bit and he tries to run her away, but it probably didn't happen.
Maybe he partners up with her because he's a Red Court vampire and it's a lucrative deal.
Well, there's three major plot points, kind of, or four even if you count what Cal and Komori are doing off screen, that you kind of see the aftermath in the beginning. Right?
Yeah.
And so so he doesn't get Mouse. Does Lord Wraith knock off Thomas? Does Lord Wraith stay in power? Because
does Harry even find out that Thomas is his brother now?
Right.
That's one of the things that I was thinking of Death Mask, because Nicodemus said little Maggie's youngest, and then that was the first real clue that he had. Like, wait, there's another one? How am I the youngest when I thought I was the only child? And then he finds out of Thomas in the next book. But if maybe Nicodemus just told him in Death Masks, then the whole setup of Blood Rights and Thomas as part of it is different. Maybe it happens more or less the same way, but they don't have the weird, crazy reveal in the middle. Because if Harry is still going to be like, this is my brother and this person I protect, then it's still like Lord Wraith needs to stop trying to kill him. But the whole subterfuge getting into the porn thing, maybe that whole doesn't happen. Or it does, and they use Bianca's women instead.
Yeah, well, right, because some of them would still be alive, and the varsity doesn't burn down, presumably, or whatever, right? Or did that happen before? I don't remember, but
yeah, the fire happens because he burns it down, and then
there's 2 fires in that book. There's the pyroflagle he does at the party, and then there's another one at the end when he's like everyone.
Right. So she probably could, salvage whatever's left after the first initial one,
right.
And then after that.
Yeah, I just like it. The threads that would continue on mostly unaltered, right, would be again potentially Cal and Komori, plus or minus if the play with the food dogs was an escalation on what happened at the party, because presumably a lot of their goals would have been achieved from the party. So like that's kind of the question mark, if any, in my opinion. And then Lord Wraith is almost certainly going to try and knock off Thomas anyway, no matter what, because it's about murder o'clock. It's like, well, mm-hmm. he's my only male heir, so he's either going to survive me or he's not. So. Well,
there's also the question of if Harry's actually a vampire at this point, does he count towards the blood right curse because he's not human anymore? And does that make Thomas the only obstacle?
He's still got his blood in him?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know. I mean, that's as much of a philosophical question as anything. Is, are you still you if you're now a fucking red cord vampire? But
right. And the only reason why it's even an argument is because White Court, it's done to them, right? Like there's an other entity in your body.
Right, you're born with it.
But their blood is different. Specifically, their blood is a lighter pink.
Right. Well, presumably that's from. I mean, because you're born with this. It's in you. It's like having a tumor at birth. That's just what it is. It's part of you. The other two happen to you. They're a transformation.
Okay. I like where this is going though. So I'm going to say Harry's blood still counts for the curse, because I like the idea that Harry still bumps off Lord Wraith, but mostly in self-defense, right? In a way, right? Where it's like Harry finds out all of this shit because Lord Wraith finds out that there was 2 of them, from Thomas. Maybe Thomas is, gives it up while he's being killed, or who knows? There's 100 ways that could happen. But then he goes after Harry, and Harry just does what Harry does, and he fights the villain. He fights the monster. But
I mean, Lord Wraith and Lara already had all the information as to who Harry's mother was.
But because they know that Harry was the kid? I don't remember that.
Because after having a conversation about family towards the end, when Lara was asking in Blood Rights, why are you helping him? And he says, do you know who his mother was? Do you know who my mother was? And Lara just put the names together. Oh, yeah, they're the same person. Obviously, this makes sense. So They had files because they're technically at war. They already knew who Harry's mother was. So Lord Wraith would have known that as long as he wasn't a complete moron, which is possible.
I feel like it comes up in his monologue, though, is what I'm saying. Like, he's like, I was going to have to deal with you anyway, but now blah, blah, blah. Like,
well, yeah, but I think that's confirmation that he knew one day he would have, because the whole reason he's making his move now is he sort of figured out what the curse was, and that's why he's making his move. It's not that he didn't know Harry was Margaret's kid. It's that there was no reason to care about that until he's pieced together what she did to him.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
And also he can't be seen acting. So he's always doing things the long way.
Right. I also got to interject just for the previous conversation that this now resurrects some weirdness in that, like, what's the relationship between Harry and Lara? I'm just saying, so.
Nothing.
I know. Yes, technically nothing, but
yeah.
Just there's got to be
getting married to.
I mean, they're not even step anything because there's nothing there.
What are you doing, step wizard? Anyway, I try not to say it, but it's gotta happen. So,
some white court vampires are always trying to ice skate uphill.
Thank you. See, perfect segue for your quote, so.
I can't believe you did that.
I can.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of happy you did.
Yeah, it was good.
It was the right form of degeneracy, and it didn't have to come from me.
What's the? I said one. What's the meme? It's I can't believe you've done this. Oh, is it? It's anyone know
that's
that
pretty
meme?
much it. Yeah, I can't believe you've done this. So
Yeah.
yeah. Damn. I didn't have a joke.
How do we move on now?
So we didn't get a spit take. So yeah. Okay, blood rights. Nothing interesting happens. He totally doesn't summon a demon, and you know.
Well, that's the other thing. He probably doesn't have to worry about meeting, fucking he who walks behind in this instance necessarily. Again.
Right.
I mean, that only led to so much because it's just, that thing's still out there. But
right.
Theoretically, at this point, he's got to, depending on, again, what his status is, if he's deep in the Red Court, he's probably knows more about outsiders and everything because they're allies with them.
And that's how we got canceled. This has been the final episode of the Dresden Files. So,
It's been a good run, guys.
yeah.
It had to end sometime.
We got to go out on a bang, just like Harry Dresden. So
There you go.
this shit just writes itself.
You
Did
did
know
it
that?
again.
Like it just comes right out. Okay, so that leaves us with Deadbeat, which we've talked a lot. Like you might even say we beat it to death.
Oh my god!
I can't stop now. It's just we're in that space. So
Listen, this is taking over references, and I'm kind of happy for the fresh change.
Yeah.
Is your wife pregnant again, Justin? I feel like the dad jokes are like it's getting
She's
turned up
pregnant
here.
this morning, so maybe we should get her tested. So
Oh god.
I was like, I don't see how that's possible, but now that you both said it, and he's on the other side of the world, and even he can see why the kids love Cinema's Toast Crunch. So we better.
These things come in threes, so if one of your kids asks, then you know.
Right? Am I going to have a little brother? Shit.
You already have one. Oh no, the other one.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, the baby suddenly has said his first entire sentence, and it's
No, you're going to have a little sibling because we don't appreciate gender constructs in this household, child.
Yeah. So, I'm still old school a little bit, so it's okay that my kids are gay.
Boys have a penis,
Sometimes
girls have a
that's not.
vagina.
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
All right, so proven guilty was where it kind of got weird, right? We talked about it a little bit. The director likes to talk about wounded and broken Molly, right? But we talked about what? That's her thing. That's anyway.
Proven Guilty is a very interesting book because there's a whole bunch of shit happening that we don't really get to understand for a really, really long time. And also the really weird. Yeah. And the what's going to happen to Molly was a big question considering she was also mentioned obliquely in Grave Peril when Leah says like, you can trade your firstborn child to me. She seems interesting. And Michael almost throttled her.
Right.
That was just a generic offer.
Would this also be one of the time travel moments? Not that that's Mirror Mirror for the people who think that's a time travel book. But
No, it's not, and people need to stop that. They need to understand the difference between time travel and alternate dimensions.
Yeah, but that's like the TV tropes page is like, this is the time travel book. No, it's not.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
But would this also be one of the moments where time travel Harry appears? There's like, isn't there
this is the one it always is proven guilty. Yeah. It's the him getting run off the road. It's the Little Chicago stuff. This is the main book for it.
The disappearing guy in the back who he chases but can't catch. That's not Molly or anyone we ever find out.
Yeah, there's temporal stuff going on with Arctis Tor, so who knows if he goes there again and sees the actual event. I mean,
that would be.
He's a Winter Knight, so.
Well, by then he's picked up the coin, and he's actually the one that breaks down.
That's really weird, isn't it? If he is the Winter Knight and he goes back in time and he goes to Arctis Tor as still the Winter Knight, and Lloyd Slate's still alive.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not going to be much different than Mirror Mirror because presumably at this point, Mab will have given up on him and picked a new knight. So there's going to be two Winter Knights there.
Oh my god, it should be Thomas.
How?
Okay.
Oh shit! Don't. Because now I've got to contemplate what happens to mantles when they cross a dimensional barrier. Like
maybe Harry's just doesn't work.
Does
Well,
he
they
come
still-
with him?
Well, that's the thing.
Or is Mab the source of that power?
When we talked to Jim about this and said, "Oh, you work for me in this other reality. Now you're going to work for me here."
Uh-huh.
So presumably it's okay.
Presumably it crosses.
But yeah, then going back to your question, which is she can't have two mantles, right? Probably it's probably going to be something along the likes of like, yeah, you work for me, but the company car is it's occupado, right? Somebody's driving it. You don't get the mantle, but you still got all the obligations and shit, maybe. So
Maybe.
I don't know.
I mean, the Night Mantle is strong, but as far as mantles go, it's probably one of the quote unquote safer ones as far as pure power goes to have this problem.
Right, but I mean, the descriptions that we get for power, even with the mantles and that sort of thing, involves finite spaces and volumes, right? So, the power still's got to come from somewhere, and if Mab gives him a measure of that power a second time, that leaves her a little weaker. I guess technically Winter still has it, which is part of the problem with Summer Night, was that Winter had lost that power and needed to get it back, but...
Well, it's also a matter of it's not coming from her. It's coming from our Mab, quote unquote, still. So...
But does it get to leave our universe? And if it does leave our universe, that's also still bad.
Well, yeah, it's a power imbalance either way. It's a power imbalance taking it from here, and then it's another power imbalance throwing it there, which is probably going to cause big problems.
On the point of power imbalances, if Harry goes back in time and he is still the Winter Knight and he's running around during that time period of proven guilty, which is when it was revealed or pointed out to him that Lloyd Slate was still alive, and that's why Winter is already in balance and has been for years since Summer Night.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't the balance go away or the imbalance go away? Because now there is a Winter Knight and now it's active, and so they should have been able to notice that something was.
That's dependent entirely
different.
on whether or not she, because theoretically this version of Mab has already abandoned the idea of Harry being the Winter Knight, because that's why
No, not in Mirror Mirror. I'm talking time travel.
Oh,
Proven guilty.
Well, yeah, then probably. I mean, for that universe, it'll be in balance for a couple of hours. Right.
Yeah,
Maybe that's one
I
reason
expect
Mab
we'll either get the answer in Mirror Mirror, or it'll just be a non-issue because he won't bring it up, right? He just won't.
Well, I mean, it works either way. Either the balance is restored for a little bit, in which case it was chugging right along more or less okay without it for all those years, and two, so either way it works. So either it was plugging right along fine anyway, and or a couple of hours of that day will now have a Winter Night again.
Yeah, and I mean that question, aside the metaphysical implications about the power, right? It still comes down to how that power is exercised, right? Because theoretically, the mantles had always existed during those imbalanced times. They just weren't being exerted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's probably not going to stop in and pick up a bulletin board for Mab and just be like, oh, I'm the Winter Knight, so I'm still on the clock, so I'm going to do all this shit, right? Lloyd Slate is locked up. He is still not exerting power as the Winter Knight. Neither of them are. So the fact that there's twice as much people not doing anything with the mantle shouldn't change anything.
Well, he's also probably going to be very desirous to be restrained with any power he uses so as not to fuck up the whole timeline.
Right.
So you think the mantle is going to restrain itself to make sure that they don't?
No, I think Harry's going to clamp down even harder on whatever he does because shit's already happened. It has to keep happening a certain way.
He can't not have the mantle, assuming that his back is still broken. So he has to keep it to be able to move around unless something healed it, but that hasn't happened yet, and we haven't seen it. So it could be that for the rest of it, he's not able to. Maybe he has to do a whole bunch of mostly vanilla things. He can't use his magic in general. He can't access Winter's power in general, but it can help him.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Depending on what he's going back in time for, if it's mostly doing these relatively inane things like running himself off the road and tinkering with Little Chicago a little bit, that doesn't require, shooting an Arctic gale of fire at someone. Not that he won't have to at some point because he's Harry, but...
To make a reference that the director won't get, it'll be like Iron Man 3. And maybe what happens is, again, Harry's not going to figure out time travel. He's not going to get that power, right? So if Vadarung or whoever his sponsor is sends him back in time, maybe they metaphysically, like, tie his hands behind his back so that he can't use his power, right?
It'll be Rashid,
that
Vadarung, and Rashid.
Yes, right, of course. So, some motherfuckers, but anyway, but I think that would be a very Dresden-y thing to do, right? Is to have done to him. Is like, yeah, okay, we're gonna give you like the healing factor for the mantle because that's just gonna affect you, but you're not gonna be able to cast any magic or whatever, right? So he's literally running around. That'll be the most Detective Dresden book yet because he'll literally be a gumshoe because he won't have any other powers,
Maybe he just has to wear a pair of manacles,
Right.
Oh,
yeah, so
possible. That would suck.
For him.
It would work.
Yeah. But it'd be great at the same time, right? So
Or maybe that's what we figure out the Crown of Thorns are for, and he's just running around like a literal martyr with his power restrained.
Fun.
That would get certain people irked, I'm sure.
Well, he's going to go into a SplatterCon convention or something, probably, and he just dress up with some weird chains and thorns.
Maybe by this time he'll have learned to do a decent veil.
Don't count on it.
Well, it's possible. I mean, he did a halfway passable one in Changes.
And I guess. But who do you think would be the Winter Knight in the Mirror Mirror universe? Because I really like the idea of it being Thomas, because that's what Mab threatened.
Right.
I mean, Thomas is good. Marcone's good because depending on how the Red Court influence still is in Chicago, whether or not he can keep moving and exceeding his power base will depend on what deals and things he's willing to do. I don't know. I mean, those are the two probably really good ones. I don't really see it being Elaine. I don't really see it being someone like Billy. So,
yeah, but I mean, because the main question you got to ask yourself about who's going to be the Winter Knight is who's got connections to the Winter Court already, though. So,
well, at that point, it's just Molly's. But I mean,
or do we see like Ace or one of that crew from Summer Night?
Does the knight need to have a connection for the mantle to be given? For it to be passed to a lady, it needs to have a connection, like a relationship to one of the Fae. But
no, you just have to be a dude that makes dudette who makes a deal. You don't have to have a pre-established connection.
I guess
because you remain mortal. There's no vessel that needs to be prepared here.
But I mean, it's not like Mab goes out to the classifieds and finds somebody, right? Like,
no, shoot.
That's what cross paths.
That's what Maeve pretty much did. So
yeah.
Well, but I mean, they found Lloyd Slate, but like we don't have a history of how that happened. But what I'm saying is, like, like maybe they found him on the street, fine, I guess, but like came across. So.
I mean, yeah, it's probably more convenient that if you already have a deal with them, because Lloyd Slate seems like the kind of type that probably Maeve would have already had her hooks in, being a druggie and all this stuff, unless that was just stuff that really got ramped up as being the Knight, as seems to be told to us, because Lloyd Slate wasn't always that bad.
Right.
But in any event, I mean, there's probably some general connection because they don't just go and go like, aha, you random citizen.
Right.
Especially
then it's a matter of, he probably, Thomas is a good mark because of the White Court stuff and how he feels. And Marcone's the kind of person that would probably seek deals and power. So.
I don't think Marcone would accept being someone else's employee.
No, but
if he's going to survive.
There's only so many options we can go with until we start getting to you random citizen.
The other thing for another point of reference to try and triangulate in on this is think about who the existing Winter Knights were that Dresden lists off later, right? Or did somebody give him those names? But like you get serial killers and shit like that, right? Too. So I don't know, like thinking about it, just for a lack of a better option, I don't really buy that it's going to be any of the main characters that we've got so far. It could be. I don't feel strongly about Thomas like being the Winter Knight. I think people just want him to be more relevant and get a little bit more powered up or something like that. I kind of like the idea that he gets killed off.
Brother buddy cop again. Both of them like two Winter Knights going at it.
Yeah. That could be fun, but too good for Dresden, right? But I think Ace doing it because he's a Wild Fae spawn of the Red Cap and whatever. Like he's the right kind of douchebag that they would be looking for, I guess is what I'm saying. Like he's cool,
the right kind that Maeve would have been looking for. If Mab decides to choose because Lloyd Slate didn't work out because he was trying to betray Winter and all that, and that's why Mab decided to take it away from her again and leave it in Lloyd Slate so it wasn't happening. If Mab is choosing, she's not going after someone like Ace when she already has someone like the Red Cap.
Plus, I mean, theoretically, things don't really remain unchanged. Maeve is still going to be infected or have been infected in this universe because that's the very next book, essentially. And Mab still needs someone to take care of that. So maybe it is Elaine. Maybe she does want a Starborn still.
If that's the driving factor.
I don't think it hurt. I think it was a pretty strong factor.
I think she really enjoyed saying all those cryptic remarks to Ebenezer in Battleground of like, you think I'm manipulative.
Well, so like Elaine has charm for a couple of reasons. I mean, she's a Starborn, fine, but she's also a wizard, and I think that was a big reason why Mab went after Dresden is because
she was already entangled with the other court, so she's going to be relevant in the same way.
Yeah. No, I can like that because if you look at Mab tries to treat Dresden like every other night, but she doesn't want Dresden to be every other night, right? She's always excited when he defies her, other than like a few of the great quips we got from Battleground, right? Like, yes, you defy me, and we just skip to the part where you say it's something incomprehensible and then you do it anyway. Yeah. So she gets her patience tested, but Elaine would absolutely fit a lot of those
And
tropes, I think. So.
Like Mab said about Molly, if she is the Winter Knight, it probably keeps her out of reach of the White Council.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I like that. So.
Alrighty, that's another hour of mirror.
Well, now we can
didn't make it past proven guilty.
Now you know for part 2 that you wanted topics. This is how you stretch out topics.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, we had a lot of random bullshit, but I think we still got some good stuff in there. So
yeah, it was mostly me.
You're welcome. Wait.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Anytime.
You're welcome.
All right. We never figured out a movie for next week, or if we're doing one.
Nope. And
that's okay. I'm not going to be here, so I don't care.
I was going to say I got some bad news, so I will be out of pocket next week too. So,
ooh.
Well, fuck.
That means y'all are going to have to be big.
You guys are stuck with Ben.
Just let him pick a movie, grin and bear it, and then y'all can talk about how much you hated the really old color Technicolor bullshit or black and white.
I'll watch another black and white movie.
Do what Dark City? Do Dark City, and then you get you get a good movie that is also in black and white for the most part.
It wasn't in black and white.
It's the style. It's like,
do It's a Wonderful Life. That's a pretty good movie, and it's in black and white. It's a Christmas movie. You never want? Never mind. I'm not even going to finish that question. I know the answer to that question. I'm not even going to finish
it. Never seen it? Yeah, of course.
No. Yeah. I know who I'm talking to.
This conversation enough times.
No.
I've never seen it either.
Well, you're not American. It makes sense. You've never seen it.
American makes sense.
I'm sorry. That is a valid excuse. Take it and run with
European hate. I know where that comes from. It doesn't come from you. It comes because you don't like me. You don't like non-Americans. That's what's up.
Well, I mean,
no, I just think you're inferior. There's difference. I like you fine in the same way I like other pets, but
wow.
Okay.
Have you been listening to me? Like that's something I have completely said before. So.
Yeah, but it's more offensive when I do it.
True. So true.
That's because you say it flat. You got to laugh a little bit at the end, otherwise they think you're serious. So
That's why I do it. Yeah.
Let's watch a fun movie.
What's a fun? We watched a
You
fun movie
did it-
last time.
yeah, I was like, you did it last time, so now you got to do something.
That wasn't that fun.
Excuse me.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, it wasn't a perfect movie for me. I don't think it's that good. It's
We're
pretty.
still
It's
talking
decent.
about Emperor's New Groove, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The movie you
I'm
tried to
glad
get
I
us to
missed that
watch
if you
for
actually
6
think this
months.
movie
I didn't. I was interested in the dark. I don't want to have this argument again.
I'm really glad I missed this episode. If Andreas's position out of all his bad media positions, our Emperor's New Groove is not actually that good.
It's good, but it's not one like Justin seen it like 20 times. I'm probably not gonna watch it again. I've seen it 3 times
What?
now, and
Why not?
I'm
Might have seen it 20 times in the last year.
Right.
Well, that's
Okay,
a lot.
So, yeah, it is. So, flipping the script, what is a fun movie to Andreas? Because that ought to be good for a laugh. So,
what's a fun movie to I even like?
Shouldn't this still be in the while we're not recording part that we're not recording?
this is good.
Should we end the episode before I get roasted some more?
Yeah.
Well, you're going to get roasted either way. It's just a matter of whether there's an audience or not.
Yeah, I prefer my humiliation to be private.
Behind the scenes where
Really?
everybody still thinks that you're like just, the nice European. All right, plug everything we don't have.
Click on the drivethrurpg.net link. Send us money through Patreon. Come participate in the Discord, which is really actually fun, and I'm not just getting paid to say that. So
Yeah, because
you
you
can talk
don't.
to Cody.
Because you don't get paid.
We know none of us get it. So yes, we will take the money and then we will have plans for it eventually. But like we're not making money doing this. We're just doing it because we're nerds.
We like
Yeah.
shiny
Big
gold
true.
rocks.
But Discord is fun. Come join us there. $2. It'll be good.
I want my $2.